So we're going to close out this class and this session. We're going to be ending a little bit early today because we tend to do that on day fours because everyone's kind of burnt out, right? We've been doing all kinds of cool stuff this entire week, but we're going to be talking about vulnerability management as we close this entire situation. So vulnerability management is one of those things that seems like it's an easy thing. Like you're just going to run an automated scanner and then automatically the automated scanner is going to um, like find all of these vulnerabilities. Hold on, I got something up over here. I got to see if I'm being trolled via text message. All right, no, okay, it's not a troll. It's a completely different thing. All right, so let's dive in, right? Because it tends to be a little bit more complicated than people believe. Now, when you're looking at vulnerability management and you're looking at some of the big vulnerability scanners that are out there, they really haven't changed much as far as like what they're doing in the past 10 years. Now, a lot of these vendors will be like, that just shows that you don't know much about the vulnerability market space. And there's all kinds of innovation. There's all kinds of different things. We know of agents and we're checking applications and we're looking at all the no, but it's still the same pretty much. Most organizations, they run a scan or a scanner. They check for the vulnerabilities, the scanner comes back, and then they address those vulnerabilities as those vulnerabilities arise. Now, there's a lot of different things in automation and crap like that, but the core premise of how people are trying to address vulnerabilities in their organization really hasn't changed all that much. So we're going to go through and talk about how we deal with vulnerability scans at Black Hills Information Security and how it is a different way of handling vulnerability assessment scans in a way that a lot of other people out there just don't do it the same way. But there's very little innovation, which is kind of interesting, because most of the quote unquote innovation that is hitting the vulnerability space right now is around prioritization of the vulnerabilities, and they're trying to juxtapose that over a business like vertical, right? So what they're doing is they're saying, like, imagine the problem. Let's talk with a problem statement. So a problem statement is an organization scans and they get thousands of vulnerabilities and they get maybe hundreds of criticals and highs. And they're like, which of these things should we address first? And they put that on the vulnerability management vendors. And what they ask for is they ask for the vendor to basically give them a list of like which vulnerabilities are the attackers most likely going to attack. Almost like it's Minority Report precog, look into the future to try to figure out, what it is that somebody is going to do at some point. You can't do that, but that's what people are expecting from the vulnerability management companies. And this gets into a quote from Henry Ford, like amazing industrialist genius. Also, very well documented racist. So much racism, you guys, in Henry Ford, like a lot, a tremendous amount. But he had a great quote, right? He had a great quote, and I'm not going to disregard the quote because the guy was kind of a bit skeevy. But his quote was, "If I listened to what everyone told me, right? If I listened to my customers, I would have built a faster horse." That's a great quote, right? Because if you're sitting around, you're talking to farmers, you're talking to different people, and you're like, well, what's going to make your life easier? Like, Seamus and I were talking about this last week, and we were thinking it'd be fantastic if our Clydesdale was bigger. And it's like, okay, well, let's try to breed bigger Clydesdales. Instead, he developed not just the car, but mainly assembly lines and also did a bunch of stuff with tractors. And that's what's happening in the vulnerability management space, right? A lot of vulnerability management companies, they are being asked to look into the future and look at the market verticals and try to predict what the attackers are going to go after. And this is really this is bad. Like, this is not good. And the reason why this is incredibly bad and this is incredibly not good is because the way that this is being done is they're looking at market verticals and they're seeing what attacks are hitting those market verticals, and they're trying to extrapolate that those are the attacks that are only going after those market verticals. So let me show you a couple things. So we go to CISA, top vulnerabilities, right? So the known exploited, here we go. The routinely exploited vulnerabilities was a list that they released a while ago. And the purpose of this was to kind of come up, I can't remember, it was like 175 vulnerabilities that were out there. And I can share this up in the chat with you all. Here you go, chat. There we go. And the problem with this was when CISA came out with it is a bunch of organizations specifically started trying to fix just these vulnerabilities. They were like, well, these are the vulnerabilities that are getting hit, so we need to make sure that we're protected against these vulnerabilities. At its core, I don't necessarily disagree with that. What I disagree with is the fact that many people, whenever they looked at this list of vulnerabilities, started believing that these were the only vulnerabilities that they should be looking at. They were thinking that these were the active vulnerabilities that an attacker would go after. So we get questions a lot at Black Hills Information Security where they're like, well, we work in retail. Are these vulnerabilities that attackers in retail are going after? That's a crazy conversation to have, right? It's almost like, once again, doing funny voices. It's almost like the attackers are like, no, Francois, we cannot use this exploit. We cannot use, what is it? Go down here. We cannot use CVE 2022-47966 against Zoho. That is an exploit that is used by the Russians. They don't lock themselves down, right? They don't say this is what they're going to go after. And the same thing with penetration testers, right? Penetration testers aren't like, well, we don't use that because we're attacking retail. And that's a finance vulnerability there, Mike. It's not how things work at all, but it's the way that human beings are wired, right? Kind of tying in a chiasm from the beginning of this class to the end of this class, going back to UG and Thug. We're constantly thinking in terms of risk factors related to deny listing, right? So these are the risk factors that have hit these organizations. Therefore, these are the things that we have to address within our organization. And we really heavily rely on those narratives. This is not how attackers actually work. The way attackers really work is they will use every possible vulnerability at their disposal to gain access to your environment. That is just what they're going to do. They're not going to be limited to what's on the CISA top list. They're not going to be limited to whatever group of attackers are hitting something in retail or what MITRE or any of these different organizations say. They're going to be using any and all vulnerabilities that are exposed to them. And I can kind of, show this a little bit. Once again, going back to Shodan, right? If we go to Shodan and I log in, if we were to do something like MongoDB, right? There's a bunch of Mongo databases that are end of life. Like this is end of life. There's going to be some that are exploited, end of life. That means it's not getting any more patches, right? And there's a whole bunch of these Mongo databases that are exposed and are completely end of life. And you will see some that are exploited. The reason why I bring this up is if an attacker is going after your organization and you have a Mongo database, they're going to use Mongo database exploits against your organization. Full stop, every time. Now, are these Mongo database exploits in the CISA top 200 vulnerabilities? No, they're not. But once again, people focus on that. Right? There was some vulnerabilities that existed a while ago in Apache struts. I don't know if you remember that, but there was a big Apache strut vulnerability. It was hitting a bunch of things. I can't remember what large breach it was associated with. I can't remember if it was what was the Apache struts vulnerability? At any rate, whenever the Apache struts vulnerability hit, we had a large amount of call volume of customers coming to us, and they were like, we're really worried about this Apache strut vulnerability, and we want you to come in and make sure that we're not vulnerable. And we'd start with the basic question. Are you running Apache struts? And they would say, well, no. Well, then why would you? Well, the CEO saw it in the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal and immediately got a hold of our security team and said, we need to make sure that we're not vulnerable to this Apache struts vulnerability. We were literally getting contracts, just running scanning tools to make sure that they weren't running Apache struts. But when we were running our scans, this gets into a weird conclusion, we would find other critical vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities that the organization did not know were critical vulnerabilities. We would break into organizations and we would create an entire report, 150 pages long, with multiple vulnerabilities that were critical. We'd get on a meeting with the executives and they would always ask the same thing. Yeah, this is all good. But did you get that Apache Struts thing tested? Ugh and thug. We're still cavemen and women staring at shadows on the side of a cave, right? So we have to find a way to move on from this way that we're trying to do vulnerability prioritization and expecting our vulnerability management companies to somehow swoop down and show us what vulnerabilities are going to be exploited in the future against our organizations, because that's that's looking into the future. That's time travel. That's not computer security. And this particular approach of the way that many organizations handle vulnerability prioritization creates these blind spots. And this is one example of a blind spot that we see multiple times in organizations again and again and again. We had Roswell. When a company's vulnerability backlog is a complete dumpster fire, do you just let them die? No, we tend not to. Whenever you're looking at an organization that is really, really quite bad off, I can give you a couple of possible scenarios whenever it comes through. The first thing is we will have a conversation with the customer, and some of them are like, how are we going to address that? And I'm going to explain how organizations can address that through Ansible, Puppet, Chef, a variety of different types of automation frameworks that are out there. The other thing to remember about that is I've had organizations that were so bad that, I'll give you an example. We had this company that was, they'd hired a new CISO. The CISO came in, hired us to do a vulnerability analysis and attack surface management analysis across the entire organization, and it was bad. Like, it was literally, here's an example of how bad it was. They were running multiple Access databases, and in Access, you can create a web form that creates a website that allows you to access the Access database. It's like literally create a database, create web form, and it creates a website, HTML, that allows you to interact with the Access database. They had dozens of those apps, not simple apps, really complicated apps that were running completely on Access. And when we were talking with this customer, the developers were fighting this CISO. They were like, well, these apps have worked for a long time and they've never been hacked, which wasn't true, by the way. We had actually found a number of instances where they were in fact compromised, and they went through and cleaned it up. But they're like, we've been running this way for a long time and everything seems fine. The developers had no desire to fix these different applications as well. So when I sat down in the room with the CISO, I remember she cleared everyone out of the room. She kind of had this ashen look, and she said, how bad is this? And I said, to be honest with you, it's so bad. It isn't just the technical things, but it's the fact that your development team is fighting you, the fact that you're dealing with all of these things. My recommendation is you stay here for at least 15, 16 months as a CISO, and then you start looking for another CISO position. It's just a matter of time before they get breached. And she did just that. She moved on, and they did get breached shortly thereafter, badly, like enough that they went out of business, breached. And they didn't fix anything at all about that as well. All right, what do we got? Got another question. Okay, don't answer. I'm getting trolled. Okay. That's okay. That's fine. All right. So when we're looking at vulnerabilities, though, we kind of are at the point now where we don't just look at the highs and criticals, because that's where most organizations are explicitly focused on, right? Like, they want to focus on just those high and critical vulnerabilities that exist within their organization. And we're not even talking about organizations that are running atomic red team, like we did yesterday, where we were going through and showing you how we could identify additional vulnerabilities that are post-exploitation vulnerabilities using like atomic red team or Scythe or a tool like that. We aren't even talking about companies that are at that level. We're talking about companies that are really just running a standard vulnerability scanner and then expecting those results to be like worked on one at a time, right? So they miss stuff because they're focusing on the highs and the criticals. They miss stuff. And this would be an example of some of the stuff that they miss. It's very common for us to see telnet in environments. And once again, I've had customers that are like, well, telnet isn't used. I've had students that have said that, right? Well, if I do a search on telnet in Shodan, there's 325,000 telnet servers exposed on the open internet. That's a lot, right? So here you've got this one. This is awesome. This is a telnet server in India, and it flat out tells you, warning, telnet is not a secure protocol, and it is recommended to use something else. It's pretty awesome when you have a protocol that's literally saying, kill me. I shouldn't be alive anymore. I should go the way of SNMP on the internet, right? So, yeah, so we've got this many telnet servers. Well, it's very common for us when we're scanning to find a telnet server. Okay, so we've got a telnet server. What does that mean? Well, a lot of the telnet servers, if you're looking at most telnet servers, they have login authentication, username. We have negotiation, suppress, go ahead. This actually looks like it's running properly. All right. So let me do a filter on the ports. Let's go to 23. There we go. So these are all the different telnet servers. And one of the things I want you to see is how varied the different banners are, right? So you have like login, username. This is property of Stream Tech Incorporated. There's all these different banners, and the way that they present the banners is very, very different. Here we got a Huawei technology. This is one of this is that full banner. It's not a secure protocol and is recommended to use Accesso Register. Well, that really weird changed, right? But the banners are all different. So a lot of vulnerability scanners, when they're looking for vulnerabilities in Telnet, they'll try to fingerprint the Telnet service, and then they'll do a lookup as to whether or not there's any active vulnerabilities of that Telnet service that are currently exploitable. One of the things that they do not do is look for things like this, right? So you have this banner that says login. So if you're looking at a telnet environment that has lots of telnet services, especially on the inside, you'll see like login, and then router, login, a snake. All right, so you have all these things that say login, and then all of a sudden in the middle of all of this, you have this one telnet server that simply says router. What that is a telnet server that has no authentication. That has no authentication at all. So I wonder if I can stack queries. Can I do this? Can I see if we have pound prompts that show up? But you'll find these different telnet servers that are completely exposed with no user ID, no password. You just walk right into it. So when we have done this in the past, like a long time ago, I remember we had a customer, this one's like, I think about it a lot. We had a customer that was in India, and we were scanning the outside of their environment, and they had an ISP, and their routers were like this. Like their edge router to their environment had just straight up router. You could log right into it, and you could change anything you wanted. And the ISP, when we confronted and talked to them about it, they were like, well, this isn't a critical vulnerability. We're like, well, I can log into your routers. That's bad. And they're like, yeah, but we base all of our vulnerabilities on the output of Qualys. And this isn't listed as a critical vulnerability, so we don't fix it. And they literally gave me permission. They were like, oh, if you think you can exploit it, go for it. And we were able to exploit, reroute all the traffic from our customer's environment to one of our nodes. And then we could intercept and sniff. And then they actually fixed it, right? We had to actually gain access to an internal SCADA ICS system. We got really, really paranoid because we were able to get access to a chlorine system. And it turns out that's kind of a sensitive topic in India because of Bhopal. So if you haven't had your day completely ruined yet, go look up the Wikipedia article on Bhopal, India, and what happened there. But a lot of people died because of a chlorine gas leak. And if anybody gives you a list of ways to die, like, dying by grizzly bear attack, die in your sleep, at the absolute bottom of your list should be chlorine. Like, don't want to die like chlorine poisoning. It's bad, is what I'm saying. And then and only then were they willing to actually fix it. That was it. Now, we see this type of vulnerability pop up, I would say, probably once a quarter in an environment where we see this exact thing, right? They scan for misconfigurations. They do. And this is, in fact, a misconfiguration. I would agree with that. But the problem with the misconfiguration is the context and the banner. It's not always router greater than. It could be edge server greater than, or edge server $, or edge server pound prompt. And you can't put a signature based on pound prompt because you have a whole bunch of different telnet servers that use pound prompt in their banner, or they use greater than or less than in the banner. So trying to write a signature around the kind of the prompt that comes back is very, very difficult to see if there's authenticated or unauthenticated access to that particular telnet server out there as well. It's kind of a problem. Now, this gets into a larger question of how many organizations actually address the low and informational issues in your organization. Anyone? I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, most people don't, right? Most people don't. They just ignore all of the low and informational issues that are out there. And I can kind of understand that. Because if you're looking at a very large organization, they have thousands and thousands of vulnerabilities. However, are you going to address those low and informational issues in an organization? Well, turns out it's a lot easier than you think it is, right? So, and the reason why I say it's a lot easier than you think it is because of the way that we deal with the vulnerability assessment results, and the way that we kind of present and work through those results is pretty much fundamentally broken in many organizations, right? So let's go through the wrong way, right? The wrong way, going into Sublime. I don't know if we have any Sublime fans. Turns out a couple of years ago, my kids thought that they would try to torture me by making me listen to reggae. And I don't know what happened since high school to now, but I really like reggae. And I also like the Grateful Dead, which is weird. I don't know what the hell happened to me. I don't know when this change occurred. But yeah, the wrong way, Sublime. And I guess his son is now heading up the band, and he does a fantastic job on that as well. All right. So if we're looking at the wrong way, many organizations will address the vulnerabilities by IP address. And what that means is they will go, yeah, but that's the problem. In college, I was smoking pot. I'm not smoking pot now. It's like this inverse thing. It's like pot makes me hate reggae. That doesn't seem right to me, Megan. Doesn't seem right to me. All right.
A little backwards.
Just a little backwards, a little bit backwards. I guess yeah, whatever. All right. So many organizations, when they scan, let's say that there's 1,000 IP addresses. When they scan 1,000 IP addresses, and let's say that each IP address has roughly 25 vulnerabilities. So many organizations will look at this as 25,000 vulnerabilities spread across 1,000 IP addresses. And they'll go and hire an intern, and that intern will be like, Vulnerability 1, Telnet. I must disable Telnet on this system. Vulnerability 2, TLS SSL cipher suites. And they'll log into the server and they'll adjust their cipher suites. Vulnerability 3, missing this patch. Install this patch on this server. And they do that one at a time. and they really don't get into the math of it. And you're looking at, well, if there's 25,000 vulnerabilities and you're addressing them one at a time, it's going to take you well past your expiration date as a human being to get through all of those different vulnerabilities. You're just going to die, right? You're not going to ever get there. And management doesn't understand numbers really well. Like a lot of times they're like, we got 25,000 vulnerabilities. It's time to roll up those sleeves, get some elbow grease, and go golfing. I mean, watch you guys try to fix these vulnerabilities while we go golfing. That's just kind of how they look at it, right? So when we're looking at this, this is almost always the wrong way. I say it's almost always the wrong way. I should just say it's always the wrong way. Get the impression, Megan, that I'm getting a little bit of like suggestion, like what do you call it, where someone's trying to
Yes.
imprint something upon you,
Yes.
kind of like
You are.
inception. I'm trying to be
Mhm.
incepted at this particular point.
Mhm.
Yeah, subliminal messaging, right? Okay, we can do that. So the key point for this particular section is we really, really, really need to focus on grouping the vulnerabilities by the vulnerability, not by the IP address, right? We need to set that up and do it in kind of a different way, right? So when you're looking at the correct way, you need to focus on those vulnerabilities or the plugin IDs associated with those vulnerabilities because you actually do not have 25,000 vulnerabilities. You actually have a few hundred vulnerabilities that repeat on multiple different computer systems again and again and again. And that's a fundamentally different way of looking at vulnerability management. Because if you're looking at the number of assets and the number of vulnerabilities per asset, you're going to be swimming and sinking and drowning at all times. However, if you look at the vulnerabilities and you try to look at automated ways through Ansible, Puppet, Chef, SCCM, whatever management tool that you're actually using, and you're addressing those vulnerabilities in a global scale, all of a sudden this goes from an insurmountable problem to a problem that's actually pretty doable. So at Black Hills Information Security, we have a customer over in Asia, and they're easily one of our largest customers. They have this external network attack space that is huge. It's over 1 million IP addresses. That's not possible IP addresses. That's 1 million live IP addresses that are doing things. All right. So when you're looking at this, that's 1 million live IP addresses. And if we group by the plugin ID or by the vulnerability, we can go through this with 2 testers in 3 weeks. That's every vulnerability. That's all criticals, highs, mediums, and lows. We can do it in 3 weeks with 2 testers. And when we do this, we were kind of like the third or fourth pen testing firm that they had hired. They were bringing in very large, like big 5 consulting firms to do this. And those firms would leverage like 10 analysts for like a month and a half, and they wouldn't go through all the vulnerabilities that were showing up in these organizations because those vulnerability firms or those pen testing firms were focusing on IP addresses and not by clustering it by vulnerabilities. So let me show you what this looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and I think I got kicked out again. There we go. Go ahead and log in. I'm going to start up my VM and then I wonder if it shut down my VM. Did I run out of credits? No, I've got money. Start up the lab. All right, I'll show you. I actually do have this. I might actually have it in the intro labs folder. Let me go into intro class files. Let me go up. Here we go. Let me share this link with you all. Wow, it's not actually, oh, it's not actually going to allow you to, it's not actually going to allow you to look at it within it. All right, so let me open this up. So let me share the link real quick with you all so you guys can play around with this. There you go. All right. So once you get it downloaded, you can open it up. Here we go. And this is an old scan and I need to update it. We need to do another one, but You have a bunch of vulnerabilities where there's one vulnerability each. This is actually the scanning server that we were running the scan from. But if we look at the way that you can export this correctly and the way it should be exported, you can see that we have a plugin ID here, this 51192. You can see that this specific vulnerability shows up 49 times. All right. So this vulnerability shows up 49 times. I'm going to throw that into another tab really quick. I'm going to close some of this stuff out. I don't need it. There we go. There. Then this is how I go through vulnerability results. Just so you know, this is how I do it. And you guys can play around if you want. So we have this one shows up 49 times, and we have a number of different TLS SSL versions that are out there. We also have browsable web directories showed up on 3 servers. Unencrypted telnet server. It's not a critical, but we have 3 systems that are running unencrypted telnet servers. NTP, jQuery, IP forwarding. I'm kind of going through this like quickly, right? But you can see the number of vulnerabilities, right? DCE service enumeration, 360, 138. Methods allowed per directory. I like that one too. I'm gonna leave that one off. I know I don't need that one. So we have a number of different things, but you can see that we're sorting it by plugin and count. How many times did it see this specific vulnerability with it as well? SMB versions, once again, we have 29 systems that we can enumerate these different things at any rate, but that number, let me skip. I always get sidetracked whenever I do these things. It's actually web server office file inventory. That's another one. So if we're looking at this one, we got like the SSL certificate cannot be trusted. And down below, it lists each one of the systems that have the SSL TLS certificate that cannot be trusted. Now, if I was doing this by IP address, I would have to go to each one of the IP addresses to see this specific vulnerability, and I would have to do it one at a time, right? I'd have to go through and I would have to go to 10.55.100.1. The following certificate is not part of the certificate chain. 10.55.100.100. The following certificate cannot be validated. 10.55.100.101. You're just seeing how this shows up again and again and again. Whereas if I'm looking at this as a global issue, now I can figure out, well, is there a tool that does certificate management that we can manage all the certificates across our web servers all at once? Can we push this out with Ansible, Puppet, and Chef? How do we actually do this in such a way where we can automate hitting every single one of those? The next one, telnet, browsable web directories, right? So for me, instead of looking at every single one of these, like what should be the thing that I fix on all of these web servers, right? This isn't necessarily a critical vulnerability. It could be a critical vulnerability. But if I see that I have 3 web servers, 125, 119, and 117, and they're all running the admin directory that's exposed, what should I do? I should put out a rule that makes that admin directory not globally accessible, right? We should come up with an approach to deal with that. The next one, unencrypted telnet server, right? So we have telnet servers, and you can see that I have 2 that say, welcome to the config terminal, please authenticate. Welcome to the config terminal, please authenticate. And this one says config term. So I have 2 separate approaches. One, disable telnet, put up firewall rules that don't allow it to be accessed, whatever I need to do. But this one right here that's saying config term, that's an unauthenticated telnet server that's just sitting there, right? And then when you're doing this type of analysis and you're doing this type of vulnerability analysis, you start to run into some really cool things. Like you'll start to find things like, what's this? Admin passwords.doc, right? Install guides, security onion cheat sheet. Out of these 3 things, the one that I'm most interested in is passwords.doc. Now, I'm not going to run into something like passwords.doc on the outside of an environment, but I'll absolutely find configurations and backup files, right? So when we're talking about vulnerability management, there's a couple of things we've got to focus on. One of the first things that we've got to focus on is we have to focus on sorting by plugin ID. right? We have to focus on sorting by the plugin ID associated with that specific customer, right? We have to. Otherwise, we end up with this nightmare where we have to go to each of the different IP addresses that are out there, okay? And it absolutely might be a trap, right? It might be a cyber deception trap, which, by the way, I'm assuming I teach it at some point in the future. So check that out. Okay. So that's kind of one thing, right? That's kind of one thing. And you know what? We got some time today. So the other thing about this vulnerability management thing is how many of you are actually actively looking for jobs right now? Like you're here because you're trying to hunt. Now, we didn't do the job hunting thing this week with Banjo Crashland, but I think we have a workshop coming up with
Yep.
Jason. Can we get a link for that? Okay.
Yep. I'll grab it.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to play a game, vulnerability analysis as part of job hunting. Does that sound like fun? All right, let's do it. So we're going to do this together. I'm going to do this live. All right. So whenever you're going after a job, how many of you, let's go to Indeed. Let's go to Monster. All right. So I'm going to put in a location of Denver, Colorado. Denver, the dinosaur. He's my friend and a whole lot more. All right. So let's say I want to find a security job and I want to find one in Denver. Let's go ahead and do SOC analyst. There's no SOC. Let's just do security engineer. Let's do IT security analyst. Let's start with that. All right. And I'm going to see what are the jobs in Denver for an IT security analyst. And we're going to try to hunt this down. We're going job hunting, everybody. All right. So I've got IT help desk, lead security analyst, Maximus. Are you kidding? Is there more? Threat analyst. Okay. We have Boulder Community Health, Maximus, Maximus, Maximus. All right, I'm going to choose Maximus. We're going to go with that one. Or do you want me to go with the Nova? Let's go with Maximus. All right. So I'm going to look at Maximus, and I know nothing about Maximus at all. Okay, I truly don't. I'm not picking on them. This could be an absolutely horrible idea, but we're going to look at this, and we're not actually going through and trying to hack Maximus. It's just going to look a lot like that. So just stick with me. You're going to see why this is important. So here we've got this job. We've got essential duties. We have lead the design and development. That's a lead. Let's just go to a standard security analyst. I want to go to that one instead. Oh, I hate you. I hate you, monster. Why are you making me log in? Oh, I've got to go back to it. There we go. I don't want to be a lead. I want to be, let's go security analyst. Oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm clicking apply. Let's look at this job. Okay, straight security analyst. All right, here we go. They have an exciting opportunity to join their team in a federal financial client. All right. So do you want to know something that I just learned very quickly? All right. So this particular job posting is like, we have an exciting opportunity to join their team supporting a federal financial client. This is a remote position. I wonder what that federal remote client would be. Is it possible, I'm just throwing this out there, that federal financial client is, we are seeking a lead systems analyst to join our team to support the IRS. So one job posting is saying it's a it's a financial client, and they have another job posting that's literally saying what that client is. All right, so we found that out. That's quick. Monitor proactive vulnerability scans, multiple different security school tools, and Jira. Awesome. All right. So if I'm building up my resume right now, I'm going to go over and I just saw an actual technology I'm going to put in Jira. All right. So there we go. Actively engage with stakeholders, security teams, and discussions, communication. You got to talk with people. That sucks. Perform evaluations, vulnerability findings. Cool. Conduct investigation, security vulnerabilities. Cool. Develop updated security related documents, all these different things. We also have this stupid weird thing, Maximus TCS technology internal job profile code, TCS 056 T2 band 5. That should not have made it into this job posting. I'm just going to tell you. That looks like an internal coding. Job specific things, you have to know Bash, Python, and PowerShell. All right, cool. This is actually a pretty good job posting. I'm kind of digging this job posting a little bit. This seems like it's pretty good. So they do Linux, Unix, and Windows. That's awesome. And then they're going to say certifications, Security Plus, A Plus, Network Plus, CEH, excellent analytical problem solving skills, time management, proven ability to deal with all of these different things, advanced Excel knowledge, pivot tables. This is actually a really good job posting. So whoever did this was great. They did a good job. There's lots of technologies in here. They have specific security tools that they're actually using. And Confluence, that's another one. So we've got Confluence. I'm going to put that there. And then we're going to put in SharePoint. Nice. There we go. All right. So that's not bad. Now, when we're looking at Maximus, this job posting is good, but I'm going to be honest with you. They also do Red Hat. I want Red Hat. I'm gonna put in Red Hat. Awesome. All right. So this job posting, pretty good. Whoever's doing this at Maximus, I'm just going to call you out. You did a good job. Well done. This is not ambiguous. This actually works well. Now, what the problem is you may not have every single one of the skills that they're looking for. How many of you don't have all the skills that they're looking for? Okay, a lot of people. So I guess you just go to your dying hole and die unemployed. Sorry, that was harsh. I'm joking. I'm joking. It's a Madagascar joke. It's like, what are you doing? I'm in my dying hole. Just waiting to die. Sure. If you can get your CEH and you can study for the A plus, security plus, any of those different things, you should, right? But here's what we're going to go with. It looks at all of these different things and it's basically experience, experience, experience. This one, they're looking for certifications. I would recommend, if you can, go get your Security Plus, A Plus, Network Plus, so you can get past that. But it's like experience, 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 skills. All right. So here's what I would do if I wanted this job. There's two things I'm going to do. We're going to do it in two separate phases. And this actually applies to vulnerability management for a company. The first thing is Jira. So what you would need to do is you would need to look like, we're going to go here. We're going to open up CIS guides like so, hardening guides. I don't think that they have, oh, Puppet, I hate you. Can't believe you just did that to me. There we go. All right. So you have a number of different hardening guides that are here. And one of the things that I recommend you do is for any of the different tools that they listed, you would go through and say, okay, let's go to operating systems. They're a Red Hat shop. Here is the Red Hat Enterprise Linux right here. That this is the guide for hardening enterprise Linux. So what I'd recommend you do is download Red Hat, go through the guide and get familiar with the hardening principles of Red Hat Linux. Just literally going through that guide step by step. I don't think that they have Jira here. Let's go Jira. Nope. They don't have Atlassian. They don't have Confluence, but great. So we can go through for any of the operating systems that they laid out. We're going to go and try to find the CIS hardening guides. Okay. We're going to go try to find the CIS hardening guides for all of those things. But now we're going to go through and we're going to do Jira security like that, best practices. We're going to do Confluence security, best practices. There is SharePoint over here. They do have SharePoint right here. And then we have a hardening guide for Microsoft SharePoint. And you sure as hell can set up a SharePoint server for these. No, you don't. They're free. CIS makes this crap available for free. All right. So what I'm going to do if I wanted to apply for this job is I would spend some time and I would go through like, what are Jira security best practices, right? Like what are the recommendations for that? So here we got Atlassian and the cloud. What do they recommend, right? What are the different resources that they have for hardening and securing? Right here, this is probably the best support article for that, right? Confluence security, same thing. We would go through and say, what are the best practices for securing Confluence? We know that they're an Atlassian shop. SharePoint, we found the CIS benchmark associated with that. So I would spend some time getting familiar with what Jira does, what you can do for security on Jira, how you can set this up. And I wouldn't just put it in my resume. I would basically spend some time getting to know Jira security. What are the best practices for Confluence? You can actually set up an Atlassian account and you can learn and go to the different configuration settings on this. For Red Hat, I would download Red Hat and I would apply the CIS benchmarks. All right. So the first thing that you do is you look at the technology profile that they give you. Now, the other thing that's interesting is Maximus themselves has multiple different jobs that are posted. All right. So if you're looking at this, we have a support center integration lead, and they're going to list a whole bunch more technologies in these other job posts. So I'm going to go through this really, really, really quickly and see if there's any other technologies that they list. This one doesn't. Got partnership. Here's a test lead. What do they have for technologies? So I'm hunting for any technologies that this company is sharing out there. So once again, they got Jira. Oh, here we go. We got Selenium, we got Cucumber, we got Gherkin, we got Calton. So we're learning some more technologies that might not be directly approachable for what we're looking for here. An intern. All right. DevOps intern. Great. They got DevOps. What are the technologies that they're using? They do CI/CD, bingo, AWS. So I just found out that they have AWS. I can actually go right to cloud providers. And now we have cloud benchmarks for Amazon Web Services. So now you can start learning about Amazon Web Services. And yes, you can totally just set up environments for dirt cheap and you can learn Amazon Web Services. They use Zoom and they use Slack. I guess everyone does. Linux working on, so we know that they're using Linux. We know that they're using GitHub. They're totally an Atlassian shop for everything that they have. They've got coding languages. I don't know. It depends on the job that you're going for. Trying to learn a coding language could be somewhat difficult, but it might not be a bad idea to look up like what are the coding languages best practices for Golang or Node or Groovy or things like that. They're using Docker and Kubernetes. I think they do have Docker and Kubernetes in here for supply chain. I think they do. There you go. There's Docker. Awesome. So we can go through and we can start learning that. So notice I'm going to other jobs that they have posted, and I'm trying to develop a better profile for my resume that I'm going to put in specifically for this job. And yes, I honestly, a lot of people, whenever they're applying for jobs, they apply for jobs where they spray and pray. They're like, I want to develop a really badass resume and I'm going to shoot that resume out to as many people as I possibly can. There you go. There's a workshop for Golang, right? So you can learn some basics of Golang right there, right? But my point is, instead of trying to send my resume to 1,000 companies in the hopes that my resume is good, I'm going to spend some time and I'm going to apply to this job, right? Especially if it's like close to where my house is. So what I have now is I have a profile of what they're using. They're using Atlassian. I know that they're running Jira. I'm going to learn some Jira. I'm going to go through the Red Hat hardening guides. I'm going to go through the benchmarks for Docker, spend like a day and a half getting to know the technology profile, because if we're looking at the job, it says that you need to have, what was it? This is a lead security analyst, but the security analyst job. But this particular job said that you have to be familiar with these things. I'm not saying lie, but spend some time getting to know what they're doing. Then you're going to tune your resume to go after this job. Does that make sense to everybody? Right? Find the technologies that they're using. You may not have the skills in those technologies, but you damn well can go out and you can develop the skills in those technologies. You can do that. And then your resume will be tailored to them. And if you get that interview, you're going to cram and you're going to work your ass off. You're going to build Anki flashcards. You're going to go through like, what are all the security relevant configurations in Red Hat? You're going to learn Jira. You're going to learn Confluence. You're going to learn all of these different technologies. So when you hit that job interview, because you're probably going to get the interview because you're going to match up a lot of the different technologies out there, you're going to be able to speak to these things. And it says familiarity. And they may ask, how did you learn this? And what you would say is just basically, I spend a lot of time trying to learn as many technologies as I possibly can. Just be honest. What have you been doing? I built a Red Hat server at home and I saw a lot of jobs that were looking for Red Hat experience. So I sat down, went to the CIS hardening guides to learn how to harden a Red Hat system. What about Atlassian? I set up an Atlassian account to learn Atlassian, watched a whole bunch of videos. Atlassian is kind of like one of the gold standards for ticketing and systems that are out there. So I tried to learn Atlassian. Are you an expert? Have you done it as part of your job? No. I just kind of learn on my own. When you have somebody that has that type of self-motivation and has that drive to learn these things, that is somebody I want to hire. All right, so that's the first half. I've got a few minutes. We're going to do the next half. So we've got Maximus Denver is the name of this company. So I'm going to try to learn more about Maximus Denver. Let's see who they are. They're maximus.com, innovation with impact. Great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Maximus. We're going to do site : maximus.com, like that. And now I'm only pulling the Google results from Maximus themselves. All right. Now, what I'm trying to do is develop a better understanding of their technology profile and what they're doing. Right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove investors, minus investors, remove that. They have a ton of just straight Maximus. Healthcare options, great. Minus healthcare options. I got all kinds of people calling me today. They have certifications. It looks like they have one primary website that they hang everything off of. I'm not seeing a lot of other technologies that are out there. Like usually it would be www.maximus.com. Can I do? No, if I do minus maximus.com, that's not going to work. Man, looks like we got everything. That's kind of a bummer. Let me go all the way back here. Let's see what we got. All right. I'm not done yet, by the way. I'm not dead yet. I've got something else we're going to do. Yeah, it looks like all of their stuff is just straight up maximus.com. This is the whole site. But what I'm looking for is other technologies like vpn.maximus.com. Ah, here we go. Awesome. Okay, it took a second. We had to dig deep, but now I've got this Maxi API. So we're getting some technology here. TRA. I don't know what the hell TRA is. Okay. Here we got a portal, DCX portal. All right, awesome. I'm going to stop there. All right, so right here we have the Maxi API is up and running. I don't even know what the hell this is, but that's weird. This one, we've got a login. We've got a TRA service. I don't even know what this is. This looks like it's their own internal portal support system. Student users. All right, so we're getting some technology. Document exchange. Okay, so they're using some type of document exchange portal here as well. So I'm trying to develop like what is their technology profile. The other thing I can do is use built with. If I go to builtwith.com and I do a search with builtwith.com for maximus.com, and I put that in here, it's going to tell me what is the technology that they're using. So we know that they're using Adobe. We've got analytics and tracking. They got a bunch of analytics and tracking stuff that they're using. They got a bunch of widgets. They're using Slack. We knew that they were running Slack. So looking at like securing Slack would probably be a big important thing. Bang, we just found out that they're using WebEx. So they use WebEx for their meetings. So is there anything out there about securing WebEx on that as well? Elastic. We know now that they're not just using AWS, but they're using Elastic load balancing as well. So you can talk about that as well. Cloudflare. Awesome. 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 All right. So we just found out that they're using Cloudflare for securing their environment. We're developing a much better technology profile. These are more products that you can do some security like lookups, like how do you secure Cloudflare Radar? How do you do Active Directory on this stuff? We got languages. Framework, they're using Adobe Enterprise Cloud. Their mobile stuff. CloudFront, awesome. They're using CloudFront. So this is probably what they're using for their VPN configuration coming into their environment, and they're running Amazon S3. So with all of this, right, we're kind of developing this technology profile. So I'm going to go and I'm going to research this stuff. Like seriously, if I wanted a job at Maximus, say that they're right down the street from me, the pay is good. I may spend a couple of days like building my resume, learning the technology, looking at this organization like I would do vulnerability management. Literally everything that I'm doing is what I do when I'm trying to break into a company. What are their job posts? What are their technologies? What are the technologies that are exposed in that specific environment? What can I find out about those technologies? All of this is stuff that we use to find a job and we can use to do vulnerability analysis. All right, so the last thing I want to show you is, let's go back here. I have my system up and running. Well, let's go open up a terminal. So I'm going to kill this. We're going to ping maximus.com. I can't imagine that maximus.com is their real IP address, but I would go through and I would look at the network neighborhood and we'd go to Shodan and I'd put in this range right here because they accept CIDR notation. Ooh, that's interesting. And then we had some other Maximus things. tra.maximus.com is probably like that. Oops. There we go. Okay, so they're using Amazon. So this is all in the cloud. So it wouldn't make much sense for me to try to look within this network range. Because if I do that, it's all Amazon stuff. Do I need to log in? Yep. All right. Well, I'm already in. All right. So I would also look around that network range to try to identify if there's any other services that are exposed that Maximus has. And that is how I'd get a job. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Does that kind of make sense? I don't know if that helps anybody, but when we're looking at vulnerability management, the same stuff that I just did is like the starting recon that I would use to try to learn as much as I can about an organization. I might even use other tools like Recon NG to recon as much about that organization as I possibly can as well. All right, so does that make sense? We're about ready for a 10-minute break. All right, so let's do 10 minutes. We will resume, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about vulnerability management, and then we're going to get into a lab. We have 2 labs today. So we're still on track. We're doing really, really good with this. So like I said, I hope that helped, and that kind of dovetails in with what Jason talks about in trying to apply for a job on that. So I can help you. Jason stuff and this stuff, the recon, you can build a badass resume, highly targeted for the organization you're going after. You're going to get an interview, but you got to be ready for that interview. Man, I'm telling you, you got to study hard. And we are back. All right, so let's jump straight in and let's get to this. So once again, whenever we're looking at that attack surface management, we're talking about vulnerability management. Even with all the talk about Nessus and vulnerabilities, it's only like 2 boxes out of the MITRE attack technique matrix. I mean, that's it, right? All the recon stuff that we did, trying to learn what those portals are. By the way, one of those portals that we did, sorry, I just can't let this stuff go. This is just, maybe that's why I have a company. Do you guys see what's wrong with this? Like whatever this is, I would never go into I would never, ever, ever go into a job interview and be like, here's a whole bunch of vulnerabilities that I discovered. Don't do that. So if you find something wrong, don't go in and be like, well, I found a vulnerability and blah, 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 blah. And there's this thing and blah, 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 and you should fix that and blah, 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 blah. The more you kind of build yourself up like that, the more you come across as an asshole. So don't do that. But like looking at this, I am willing to bet that Maximus has like a really good VPN. They're using CloudFront. I use CloudFront as well. And but there's no 2-factor authentication here, folks. Like that's a bit of a concern to me, right? Like this becomes a point of password spraying. But yeah, like I said, I gotta let this. Okay, we're gonna close all of this. We're done. But this is, like I said, this is what a good pen tester, a good vulnerability analysis engineer is going to do, right? They try to learn as much as they can about that organization. But really, when you're looking at just scan results, it's just 2 boxes, right? There's a ton of things that are actually missing. So on the outside, that recon, we found some stuff, right? Now it's not critical vulnerabilities like we can hack them, but we found technology footprints, we found the technology that they're doing, and you're going to try to get a job at that place, right? And how many of you are getting started on this right now? Like you're not even really listening to me. You're hunting for a job and you're trying to implement this. You're going through and you're looking at jobs in your area. You're researching the technology footprint. You're trying to find out what they're doing. Like, you know, my hope is that you're not even really 100% engaged, that you're now kind of using this different approach to get your resume to be one of those top resumes that that people are going to do. So yeah, stop thinking in terms of your resume and sending it to thousands of people. Try to get your resume so it matches what you're going after and make damn sure you're ready to kick ass in that interview. When it says experience and familiar with, yeah, going through CIS hardening guides, you got it. Now, the next thing, other than vulnerability scanning results, the next thing that is absolutely just critical is we're now going to be looking at web apps, right? Because if you're trying to do computer security, if we're looking at AI, we're looking at all of these different things that are out there and the stuff that we're dealing with, AI is going to take care of a lot of like desktop security. It is. Desktop security is getting less and less viable as an attack methodology. We're moving a lot of our attack methodologies into the cloud, right? That's where we're focusing on. And we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But when we're looking at web apps, oh my God, web apps are just put together by some of the most horrific developers you've ever come across. And the level of security, like just rigor, is through the floor. This gets into a longer conversation that's kind of a pet peeve of mine. But yeah, a lot of web developers just aren't that good, and they throw together crap for companies, and that creates huge vulnerabilities. But this isn't just for web developers. This is also for third-party products, because a lot of the third-party products, it's an absolute race to the bottom to try to get the absolute cheapest development they can. And this is creating two separate issues, right? The first issue is a whole bunch of stuff is getting outsourced, which is pretty normal for most organizations these days. And you're going with the cheapest people. Now, that might be somebody in Kentucky or South Dakota. It could also be somebody in India. It could be a number of different places and people. But the other problem is AI, right? And this is something that everyone forgets about AI. I saw like Wix, they were like, you can use our AI agent to create your website and just talk to AI. All you need is you. Pretty good slogan, that. But here's the problem that I have with it. How is AI trained? Like whenever these companies are creating these coding, like they're using Claude, ChatGPT, and they're creating code, how were they trained? How is the AI trained? It's actually not garbage in, garbage out. On human generated content, a lot of it is Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow used to be the place that everyone went to, right? And I'm going to do Stack Overflow, and I'm going to look in the news. Stack Overflow's usage has dropped by like 70% because everyone is using AI, and AI was trained on human code. So do you really think that AI's code is not going to have any vulnerabilities in it? Do you see the dichotomy? Do you see the problem? Where did you learn it, AI? I learned it from you. So it's garbage in, Phoebes nailed it, gospel out, right? So this is still a huge area for you to be viable and understanding. And you don't have to know this like really, really super well. We have an amazing resource in BB King's class on getting started with Burp Suite Pro. We saw 2 job postings that wanted people to understand how to use Burp at a minimum. And Z Attack Proxy is usually a pretty good stand-in for that. And we'll talk about that here in just a couple of seconds. So how do we secure our apps? Training is ridiculously expensive, which is something we're trying to deal with in Antisyphon, is trying to make high quality, like sans quality training affordable and accessible to as many people as we possibly can, right? That's absolutely something that we have to focus on, right? So let's talk about this. So the software development lifecycle has continuous builds, right? It's being updated, modified, changed. They're changing the GUI, they're changing things all around. And this creates a great opportunity for you to have this understanding of the testing methodology that is specific to web applications. Security is often bolted on at the end. It's getting really expensive. It is very, very, very dangerous to just bolt security on at the end. And it should be done continuously throughout the process all the way through. Now, one of the things that I really, really, really I hate is the security community's like effort to keep punk rock elite, right? There's so many people in information security that kind of have this elite jackass attitude of just like, I do exploit development. I had somebody, a former colleague of mine, that thought if you couldn't write a 0-day exploit, like a buffer overflow, heap overflow, then you weren't a good security professional. And I used to get really stressed out about that because I was worried I wasn't good enough. Like I had written buffer overflows at DoD, I'd done some heap overflows and things like that, but it wasn't core to my being. I didn't like walk around and think all the time about pop return and structured exception handlers and feng shui and the keep. I just didn't. And that was his thing, and he was really good at his thing. And it was like, cool, right? But then it hit me. I've been doing pen testing for a long time. And honestly, the amount of times that I had to write a 0-day, it was like nil. And all of a sudden, like it's almost like scales fell from my eyes, and I started looking at DEF CON, and I started looking at a lot of these conferences, And a lot of the people that I thought were super elite, crazy hackers, they were fronting. They may have had some technical skills, but a lot of the people pulled down the technical skills to their specific skills. If you didn't have the skills for doing web app analysis, then you weren't a real hacker. If you didn't know how to do a buffer overflow, heap overflow, all the different 0 days that are out there, then you're not a real hacker. And they kind of created this narrow definition out of fear to make security as hard as it possibly could for everybody, but it revolved around their definition of what they thought security was. And I kind of just got to thinking that's garbage, right? We shouldn't be looking at things in that way. So when you're looking at security, a lot of security testers, they know less about like web apps than web app developers. They just have a certain skill set associated with it. And the question that just popped up was like, so in effect, they were bullies? Yeah, pretty much. If you're looking at kind of what's happened in the early days of computer security, everyone were bullies. Everyone was insecure. I mean, a lot of people that got into computer security, they're not the most socially adept people on the planet. If you're really into dial-up modems and you're getting your social interaction in mud chat rooms, right? Then you're probably a little bit insecure. I'm just throwing this out there. And then also in the security community, you have all these insecure people that probably didn't have the best, social skills in grade school or in high school. And then all of a sudden we go to conferences, you pour alcohol and shake us liberally and let us loose. And people are like, whoa, security people are kind of assholes. Yeah, kind of happened. It's getting better, right? It's getting better, but we need to break down this idea that security is hard. We need to break down this idea that, you will have to be at this level to be even a competent level security engineer. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with the 80-20 rule. So what should you be testing with? Many of the tools that we talk about are so easy. They should be used in every single build cycle. That's nightly. If at all possible, you should be running nightly, right? Weekly at a minimum. We recommend that different members of the team, they split this up, they try different new things, have different people go through and do the testing. We want to spread the love. And we don't expect people to be a developer, but I do expect you to understand that this will make you a better developer. This will make you a better security professional because many of these tools are so easy to use and they give you such great feedback on what you have and what the different vulnerabilities are. It's just going to make you a better security professional. So what are you going to test for, right? There's a lot of things that these automated tools can test for very well, right? Automated tests for cross-site scripting, for SQL injection, command injection, common misconfigurations. And this is roughly like 80 to 85% of the vulnerability attack surface that you see in an organization, you're going to see with an automated tool. You just are. Now, that last bit, like, we're talking that Pareto principle, getting that last 10%, that does get real hard, real quick. And that gets into a highly specialized skill set. But most of your breaches that are going to hit an environment, they're not going to come from those really hard vulnerabilities. They're going to come from the easy stuff that you're going to see. Now, do the tools cover everything? No, they don't. They don't. They're going to miss business logic errors, permission errors, stored cross-site scripting, stored cross-site request, or cross-site request forgery. And a lot of these vulnerabilities require some level of manual testing to be able to identify those vulnerabilities. And that's okay. Like, this is in that 10% of what you're looking for. And this also helps you if you're an organization that's hiring a penetration testing firm, kind of run these automated tools and get this stuff off the table. My testers, we don't want to run a test and find thousands of cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. We don't want to find automatic vulnerabilities in SQL injection. We just don't. We see that stuff all the time. The automated tools find those things, and often it leads us to a weird place where it's just a lot of work. So what we want to do is we really want to look at it from the perspective of finding new things. So if we're working with a customer and they say, hey, here's all the cross-site scripting SQL injection that we have discovered, and we're working on these things, can you look at some of the harder stuff? My testers love that. Absolutely love that. Now, there's a lot of tools out there like Burp Pro. It's not free. I think it's about $500, so it's relatively inexpensive and it's awesome. W3F, Z Attack Proxy, Nikto, bunch of these tools are available. And if you know how to use these cost-effective tools, they're better than a lot of the tools that cost 20,000 or more. One of the main ones that you'll see again and again and again is Burp Suite Pro. Easily the most heavily used tool by the most web developers. It does not have a cool GUI. It has a GUI. I want to make it clear. It has a GUI. It's just not cool. It's a very, very like bland GUI. There's no place to simply enter a URL and have it scan from the community edition or the free edition. The commercial one does have that ability. That's nice, but the free one doesn't. And you have to set it up as a proxy on your system. Now, somebody set me up. What about Zap? They asked, and I'm like, that's a great question. Z Attack Proxy, very similar to Burp. Very, very similar to Burp. It is free, has a strong development core, it's free, has the ability to intercept and modify requests, it's free, and it has the ability to do automated scanning. And did we mention its cost? It's free 90 free. So all of you can afford it. So when you are working in your environment or you're working at home and you want to start learning web app security assessment, you can absolutely use Z Attack Proxy to start training yourself how to use these tools. So it's just a fantastic tool that you all should be working with out there. And really, when you're using these tools, you should be testing everything, right? You should be testing all of the different apps, all of the different APIs, all of these different things that you can run. All right. Oops, just lost my Discord. There we go. All right. So getting caught. Let's do a quick lab because it seems like a good time for a lab. Let's do this lab. Alrighty, let me go back. So the lab that we're going to be doing is web testing. We have a really, really super small web app. It's damn small, vulnerable web app that really gets you familiar with how to use the web application scanning tools that are out there. So we're going to start up a very simple Python server. I have MetaCTF running. I'm going to connect to my VM. It takes a while for Z Attack Proxy to start. So don't get into a situation where you're like trying to connect to it and it seems to take a while and you start it again and again and again and again. It takes a little bit for it to start. But you're going to open up Kali instance. You're going to go into the web testing directory. You're going to get your IP address, and then you're going to start the damn small vulnerable web app. And then you're going to open up Z Attack Proxy, which I'm actually going to start right here. Just going to do that right away. Sure. Because it takes a while for Zap to start. And then you're going to do an automated scan against the little damn small vulnerable web app that we have. All right. So that's the lab. Pretty straightforward. We really have one more lab after this. Now, this lab, let's go ahead and let's put, I don't know, this one's pretty fast. Let's put like 15 minutes on the clock, starting at 12:30 or the bottom of the hour. Let's put 15 minutes on the clock. And then I'll do the walkthrough, and then I'll set us up for the last lab. We'll do the lab in the break. We'll do the closeout, and then we'll be done about an hour early today. All right, let's get rolling, everybody. All right, here we go. All right, so I'm going to open up my Kali prompt. I'm going to accept. Did you read the EULA? We're going to go ahead and become root. We're just going to follow the instructions. Then we're going to CD into the opt web testing directory. And then we're going to get our IP address, it's kind of a big deal. And there we go. And then we're going to start damn small vulnerable web app. I'm going to make my box here a little bit bigger so I can still see the IP address whenever it runs. There we go. Then I'm going to set this over here, which has my IP address, 10.10.21.36. And then we're going to start up our scan. I'll pull Z Attack Proxy off to the side just a hair so I can see my IP address. There we go. That looks good. All right. So we're going to kick off an automated scan, right? So if we're going through the instructions I already did getting it up and running just because, I wanted to not have to sit and watch it load certificates. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to run a scan against 65412. So we'll put in the IP address of our Linux system, which is 10.10.221.36 colon 65412. And then all we have to do is do a scan. Now, one of the things that I absolutely love about this, and the reason why I think that this lab is so important, is if you're looking at Z attack proxy, you shouldn't look at Z attack proxy as a tool necessarily that's just going to be out there if you're getting started on your career. Just look at it as a learning tool. All right. There's a number of different sites, and I can show you one of them would be Acunetics Art. Is a test vulnerable. Oh, it looks like they got it down. Ew. Here we go. So these are some example test websites that you can run. Some of them don't work, apparently. Okay, this one does. Awesome. So I'll put this one up. Actually, I'll just put the main website. It's kind of cool that Acunetics does this. These are really old technologies, but it's really good to kind of learn how to do these things. Okay, this one's dead. This one's dead. All right, so there's a couple of them that are still alive and kicking. And there's a bunch of different web apps that are out there for you to learn on, right? Like there's Juice Shop by OWASP right here. Another really good one. So there's a bunch of them out there. And also, if you're doing Hack the Box, there's a bunch of boxes that you can break into that allow you to do this as well. All right, so if we go back to our scan, it's about 50% done. And if I go to the alerts, it's already got some pretty good stuff. We have cross-site scripting. That's great. We do have some SQL injection. And one of the things I love about this is it gives you kind of other information. What can you learn about this? You can go to OWASP, you can learn about SQL injection, but it also shows you the request and then the response as far as where it actually identified the SQL injection attack. In this one, we have a SQLite 3 operational error, syntax error. So anytime you get a syntax error directly back from a web server when you're testing it, that's a pretty good sign that you have SQL injection on it as well. This one, it actually identified the SQLite database, so you can see all of these different request locations of where SQL injection resided. So there's a bunch of them out there. All right. So there's a lot of really cool things that you can learn and just kind of going through and running these scanners against vulnerable websites and then trying to learn them. Another one that I like quite a bit is a Damn Vulnerable Web App. And there's actually a Docker container for this as well. So there's just tons of them out there. And all of this really is built around the concept of you got to learn, right? And honestly, if you start learning these tools, you work through all the vulnerabilities in Damn Small Vulnerable Web App, and then you work through all the vulnerabilities in a Damn Vulnerable Web App and also Juice Shop. If you just kind of went through those things, right? If that was all that you did was just those things, then you're probably going to be better than 99% of the different web application, or not web application pen testers, but of the security professionals. You're basically right at that bottom threshold of people that do this stuff professionally for a living, so get through these and learn that skill because it's all about upskilling and getting better in your organization as well. All right, so everything that we're talking about, though, really does hinge back to Intro to Security on getting caught. And this is absolutely one of my favorite memes on the entire internet. It's this precious moment between Grimace and a child where the child gets to hug a Muppet, and it looks like the Muppet's eating his head. So I just think that that's funny. All right. So you want to track what are the things that you were able to detect. What are the different vulnerabilities that you were able to detect, however you want to do that in a spreadsheet or whatever. So we're really moving away from can we be hacked to what can we detect. And we have frameworks like MITRE and a bunch of different tools that allow us to start identifying gap analysis in our organization to start securing things as well. And we did the web testing. All right, the last section, last lab of the day, we're going to do this in the break, is Active Directory hardening. Really critical. There's a bunch of tools that help with this. We had already talked about Bloodhound as a tool that helps identify that attack path analysis of going from a lower privileged account to getting to full domain administrator. But you can take that data from Bloodhound and you can run it through Plumhound, which is free. And then Plumhound will do a number of different checks, domain users, Kerberostable users. We're going to set the lab up. The person that's setting the timer will set the lab for probably a quarter after. So you can set the timer. So it'll be 15 after. Has a number of different checks that you're going to do and gives you a nice little report. Because if you're looking at the vulnerabilities in Bloodhound, it's not just one path. I mean, that's what the pen tester is looking for, of course, but it's a collection of all these different types of things. And these things are constantly changing all the time. So it's possible that you find one attack path today, and then that attack path is gone tomorrow, or a new one arises. So Plumhound gives you this kind of workable kind of report format for you to find those vulnerabilities. Another great tool is Mimikatz. Run Mimikatz and see if it actually can detect, if any of your EDRs can detect that type of memory analysis of pulling credentials out of memory directly. The final tool, Pingcastle. Pingcastle is a great tool. It's free if you don't use it for commercial purposes. It's kind of expensive now if you use it for commercial purposes. I want to say it's something like $10,000, which, to be perfectly blunt with you, still a smoking good deal. It's really good. So check it out. But we now have a lab where we're going to do Pingcastle. So we're going to go back to our lab directory and we're going to go to the Pingcastle lab. I'm going to put that up here. There we go. And basically, you're going to go to the Pingcastle. They have a report that they've made available for you to go through. And I don't even know how in the hell this environment that they ran Pingcastle against, like, runs. Like, there are just so many vulnerabilities in this. And you can take a look at the report. And what we're going to do for this particular lab is you're going to go through and you're going to answer a few questions. And you can answer those questions here publicly. Like, are there any systems with empty passwords? There are. Are there any accounts with passwords that never expire? Excuse me, there are. And what does the everyone and anyone group mean in Active Directory? Any old passwords? So this has all the instructions and the solutions down below. So we're going to spend about 20 minutes with you getting familiar with Pingcastle and what it outputs, but it's great as a vulnerability analysis tool for Active Directory. This is actually a report that's already been generated, Sophia. This is on their website. So we don't need to give licenses to people. You can just go directly to the report. The other thing about Pingcastle, like I said, if you're not using it for commercial purposes, I believe it's still free. All right, so let's get rolling. We got about 20 minutes left with break and lab, and then we're going to do closing ceremonies. Megan, do we have any winners at this point? Or anybody that's gotten it?
Yep, we do.
All right.
But we're still waiting on some more.
All right, that sounds good. That sounds great. I've got to go talk to Erica for a little bit. We've got to talk to our bank, which is a big, scary bank, about some different financing things that are going on. All right. All right, we're at the end of the session. All right, so did the Pingcastle. I wanted to kind of do this as a little bit of an advertisement for the cyber deception class. I don't know when my next one is coming up, but it's the next one in the cycle. Check it out. We do things like create honey user accounts. We create and work with tools that can do cyber deception and geolocate an attacker within 20 meters of where they are. It's a lot of fun. If we can get a link up for the next one, the cyber deception class, that's coming up. I would love to have you all there. All right, we're officially at closing ceremonies, everybody. I said we would be done a little bit early today. And Megan, are we ready?
Yes. So, and I just want to warn everybody for the cyber deception class, that's going to be in EU time, right?
Yay.
Yeah. But you're going to be there, so it won't be as
I'm
difficult.
fine.
Yeah.
I'm going to be awake. So
Yeah.
that's good. Yeah.
So, but yes, we do have a winner.
Oh, who's the winner of the entire course catalog?
Okay, and this was done scientifically again by a child picking a number. And so it's Exor Joe. Are you
Where'd
here?
you go? Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Exor Joe.
They have to be here to win. So, oh, yay. Okay. So I'll be sending you a message soon and getting your
No, I think that, oh no, there is Exor Joe.
Yeah. All right.
That's
So
great.
yay.
Congratulations. All right. So closing out speech, everybody. I want to say thank you so much for hanging out. We actually retained a huge percentage of the students, Megan. I think we started with 80 some live, and we're at 71. So that's a good retention, and we greatly appreciate you hanging out with us. As I said, we're trying to do something really, really different. We're really trying to do something different with Antisyphon. We're trying to create a training company that takes care of the instructors. We're trying to create a training company whose primary goal is not profits above everything else, putting people above profits. And I wanted to give you a little heads up on kind of what our background is and how this all happened. This is all a mistake. This did not happen naturally. So what happened is during COVID, we had to move a bunch of our training for Wild West Hacking Fest to a virtual format. And we had to do it literally within 4 days. It was nuts. And we were able to pull it off. And then when we were doing the Wild West Hacking Fest virtual con, we came to the conclusion that there was a huge need for people to still have community. There was a huge need for people to still get training. And we started doing some training to fill that need. And when we were starting that training and when we were working on building that training up, we got into a kind of an, I don't want to say heated, it wasn't heated, no one was angry, but we got into a very urgent conversation about scholarships. And specifically scholarships for underrepresented groups in computer security. And there were people that like, well, we need to have scholarships for women and we need to have scholarships for African Americans. We need to have scholarships for all of these different underrepresented groups. And I need you to stick with me. I need you to stick with me. This is going to get weird. Butt pucker time. I hate scholarships. I just want to be completely honest with you. I think that they're great for the people that get them. I think the people giving out the scholarship, they get something out of it. You know, they feel like they're helping. But the problem with scholarships to specific groups of people is it doesn't change the game. It doesn't. And while there's a good heart, while there's good things that are receptive and it can absolutely change lives, it doesn't fundamentally change the architecture of everything. So instead of doing scholarships that were like, you know, students or Pacific Islanders or Native Americans or people from the Pacific Northwest or women or LGBTQ or people of color, we just decided, why don't we just burn the bridge down completely? What would happen if we just did training where it was full pay what you can and that was it? What would happen if we actually did that? Where I do not care if what your religion is. I don't care about your sexual orientation. I don't care your gender. I don't care about your political affiliation. I don't care your color. I don't care where you're at in the world. The only thing I want you to do is to come here, learn computer security, hang out, and do cool stuff with cool people. That's all we asked for. And it was an overwhelming success. The first time that we did it, I think we had like 5,000 people that did the pay what you can training. It was overwhelming. And that was kind of a peak, but it was definitely needed at that time. And we continued with that. And we continued with this concept of especially the core skills that we teach at Antisyphon for CISSP, for intro to security, for all the things that we're doing, trying to keep those as much pay what you can as we possibly can. Also, you should take advantage of our Pay What You Can certification as well, and proudly put that on your resume and get that out there. Now, about the Pay What You Can, I do want to address this because I think that this is somewhat important. We had a number of people that attended this class, and they paid, and they didn't have to pay. Some of them paid substantially more than the minimum. And I wanted to just say thank you. And if we can all give a round of applause and thanks to all of those people that paid to attend our class and they did not have to. I want to say thank you to every single one of them, because from a financial perspective, they make this possible. So let's say thanks. Let's give them kudos, whatever we can. We really appreciate all of you. We really, really do. All right. Now, the other group of people, however, the other group of people are the people that did not pay. And I want to call them out for a couple of seconds. Once again, butt pucker factor, relax, it's going to be okay. We had a number of people that showed up to this and they chose not to pay to attend the Pay What You Can class. And I want you to understand, for all of you that chose not to pay, that we at Antisyphon, a number of us definitely come from blue collar roots, and we know what it's like to have to tape your kids' shoes together. We know what it's like to have our shoes taped together because we have to wait another month or two before parents can afford it. My mom was a lunch lady. We talked about her briefly. I remember my mom would basically smuggle food out of the kitchen, and that was what my family ate. It would be in these, these tin cans that like beans or peaches would come in. And I remember getting hamburgers. There would be like 12 of them stuffed in there, and the hamburgers would vaguely smell of peaches, which is actually delicious, by the way. I just want to point that out. And I remember growing up in a house that was literally twice the size of this room. Not my whole childhood, but definitely a part of my childhood when my dad was deployed in Korea. I know what it's like. I get that. And a number of us know what that's like as well. We absolutely understand. We also understand how absolutely infuriating it is that in society today that they look at poor people and they say, these people are lazy. That's absolute bullshit. I know a number of people that attend this class. Some of them are working 2 jobs. Some of them are working 3. I know that there's a whole bunch of people that are looking at the world and they're trying to find a path to better their lives. And those doors are closed to them. They can't get student loans. They have a whole bunch of debt. Maybe they had kids really early and it shut the door for college available to them. Maybe they went to college and they made some bad choices in their earlier years in college and they had to drop out and get a job. And those decisions that they made in the dumbest part of your life are now carrying through with them through the rest of their lives. And all these people need are just a chance. One of the greatest things that happens in Antisyphon is when we're at a conference and we have people that come up to us and they say, you guys changed my life. You guys were the starting genesis for me getting a job at a SOC, got me a job as a pen tester, got me a job on a security team. You were the ones that were able to get us to that job. And some of those things are phenomenal stories. And I'm going to take them with me to my grave. One of my favorite stories was a mother that came up to me in, Megan, I think it was Reno, Nevada. She came up to me and she did 2 things. She said, I got a job from your training and they paid for me to come to this conference. And I'm like, that's okay. In this industry, that's normal, right? That's normal for them to get you a plane ticket, get you a hotel, get you training. And she said, she started crying and God damn it, I wasn't going to fucking cry this time. I made it through my mouth.
You almost had it. You almost had it.
It's got me. All right. But
Pull
she
it
was
back
talking
together.
about,
You got it.
she was talking to me about how she got a job. And then shortly after she got a job and she got insurance, she found out that her son had cancer. And because she had a job and because that job paid for the insurance, her son was able to get the top-notch care that he needed so he could make it through cancer. And we hear stories like this all the time. Like right now, we're at over 300 people that we know definitively have gotten a job specifically because they've done something with BHIS in a workshop or things like this. And when I'm looking at all of these people, and we look at these people that are working blue collar jobs, and we're looking at people that are working 2 to 3 jobs, one of the things I want to call out is I understand that you paid. You may not have paid in dollars and cents, but you paid in the one thing that the world clocks about you, and that's your time. Everything is hourly, right? And you gave us that time. And I want to say thank you for that time, because that time means a tremendous amount to myself and the rest of the team that we have here. You gave us time, and that time could have been spent with your kids. That time could have been spent with your significant other. That time could have been spent kind of resting your body before you go and you work another double shift or double doubles, because I know what that's like as well, right? You gave us that time. And for that, I want to say thank you. And I think everyone should say thank you, because the people that take the time and they take the time to do something like this and they try to better their lives are the best people in the world. And we need to recognize those people. And I hate to tell you this, I am so sorry that this industry is an absolute unmitigated shit show right now. It's a bad time in the industry, and we're going to do everything we can to get people trained up. We're going to do everything we can to help people with their resumes and like showing you the stuff. We have the workshop with Jason that's coming up. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that you bubble up to the surface, because the people that come to this class that are making a huge career change, that are making this investment, are the people that should be at the front line to get jobs, because they're the people that are going to kick ass. So with that, I want to say thank you. We really appreciate your time. And we have one small request for you, one little baby request. We need you to help us amplify the signal. Whenever we do these classes, whenever you see it on LinkedIn, whenever you see it on X, when you see it on Blue Sky, when you see it on Discord, repost it. Help us amplify that signal. Because we're trying to reach out and we're trying to find these people. We're trying to find these amazing people and get them into the industry. Because I'm tired of the industry looking like me. I love all of the weird, strange people that we get in this industry. I love the people with the strange backgrounds, the people that worked in a warehouse, the people that worked driving trucks, the people that were maybe stay-at-home moms that did a career change, and now all of a sudden they're like some of the best pen testers the world has ever seen. I want these stories. I want these narratives. I want you people and the diversity and the wonderfulness that you all bring to the table, because it enriches our lives and it makes us better at what we do. But we need your help amplifying that signal. I don't care where you're coming from. When you come to the store, leave your religion, leave your politics, leave all of those things behind, because now we're information security professionals and we're working together towards a common goal of trying to defend the networks. And honestly, if you look at all the shit that we're dealing with, it isn't just our networks. We're in a fight for the future. So with that, I want to say thank you very much. Get out of here, go forth, and do great things. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, John. All right, everybody. Like John said, please make sure you amplify the message. You will receive, if you've registered and you still have time, because registration stays open until 4. So those of you that are joining us on the streams, please go and register. You still have time to do that if you have not done so. And you'll get a certificate of completion that you can post. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your networks, and we would love to have them in our next class. And hopefully we'll see all of you again. We had so much fun playing bingo today. We really appreciate all of the fun stuff, even you, Roswell. I appreciate your sarcasm and humor. Yeah, you guys make my job really fun. We absolutely love you guys and hope to see you in the next class. With that, D. Brown, go ahead and kill it with fire. Bye, everyone. See you next class.